Are you also drinking milk as you're preparing to read?
I knew someone would think that. It's actually like coconut milk
Oh, okay.
that I'm drinking because I went for a walk in the morning and it was so hot already. So I'm a little dehydrated. So I'm drinking coconut milk. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
So everyone who's here, welcome. Diana, welcome. This is the third and final. Somehow we're reaching the end of April. Not that it,
Yeah.
not that the calendar months have as much meaning as they used to, maybe, but um, this is our third and final reading for the Pima Community College Library series, the new series of online readings in honor of National Poetry Month, but also in honor of National Poetry Life. And today's reader is Diana Marie Delgado. Your first book came out in September. Your debut collection of poetry, Tracing the Horse, came out in September.
Mhm.
So it's still very new, very fresh in this world. We have it in our collection, but it's
Yeah.
currently quarantined in our collection.
Aw.
But people can also get copies at Antigone Books. Antigone is taking orders over the phone. I don't know exactly what their protocols are, but that's still happening. It was a new and noteworthy book recognized by the New York Times. And I imagine that maybe you were in the midst of doing readings when the pandemic struck. So we're very grateful that you're reading for us. You've also written, Diana's also written and directed plays, which
Mhm.
I'm curious to hear more about. And I think she's currently working on a novel,
I'd
maybe?
like to continue that
Yeah,
saying that. But yeah, I think that I am.
yeah. So we've had three poets over the past few weeks, Dot Devoto, Bojan Lewis, and Diana, and I believe three poets who are all currently working or thinking about prose anyway. So that's an interesting connection. Um,
Sure.
we'll have a short Q&A after Diana reads, and people are welcome to submit their questions via chat, if you know how to use the chat option, and then we'll select from those. But now we'll listen to Diana Marie Delgado.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me. It means a lot to be able to kind of be virtually part of this community, and just thankful. So I'm going to read from the book Tracing the Horse, which came out I think September 8th or 9th of 2019, which seems like a long time ago, but it's actually fairly recent. And I'm going to start off with kind of a linchpin poem that I feel is a linchpin poem that really made me think when I was in New York that I had a book. The sea is farther than thought. In church, the boys have so much light, plants grow toward them. My aunt handed me an organdy fan and said, "Hold this if you're frightened or want to lose yourself. The devil can dance like a goddamn dream." There are three things on earth to point to: the sun, the moon, and the television. I can locate one of these. My brother walked into a garage with the needle taped to a battery and emerged with his entire stomach tattooed. I don't think I'll touch a face like that again. Across the street, wetbacks sleep five to a room and sweep and water dirt while children send canoes without oars down the Hudson. Let me explain westward expansion. Snow unfolded over a wagon train of nine, and nothing without wings survived. The sea is farther than thought. He answered the door holding a rag to his neck, and we kissed on the service porch near a pit bull that had just won a fight. Sometimes my father whittles for my mother in front of a bonfire, the vein searching his thigh, Corinthian blue. To be honest, I called because there was snow in my glove, not because I missed you. If the original tunnel of the body is the mouth, I've never had one. As a girl, I kept horses and a hairbrush inside a blonde toy box. One day, my face will refuse to turn away. Some people like poison. I kneeled every time I opened it. So that was, I think, probably one of the earlier poems that was written in the collection that really made me understand that I had more to talk about. I'm going to read the next poem from the book. I'm going to read is a poem, one of the longer poems, titled Songs of Escape. And this is another type of form that I created in the book, which is sort of like a smaller version of what I tried to do with the entire book form. And the way that I organized the book was to think of the episodes that I was writing about as constellations, and these little pieces that I eventually sort of created a constellation. Songs of Escape. Our house, 2 doors, a window that never opens. A nurse shines a penlight in each eye and nods when I answer. My hair is falling out again. The doctor doesn't know why. God does. So does Mom. I lean over a sink the color of seashells, cutting myself, proving I can sweat into the symptom, watch the doves pour out of me. Dad traps the calico tabby that killed our bird, pushes her into a plastic bag, then into the gutter so she'll learn. I sit at the kitchen table, misspelling pleas for help. People to run from. Joey Bulldog, Juice, Donito, Wolf, Silent, Bugsy, Bewilder, El Scorpion. Come winter, I sing. I carry a red flame in my nightgown pocket and am slapped until I learn to ask for softer fruit, semen, egg yolk, blood, ordinary things that girls are forced to swallow. Men are the only islands I've ever lived on. I'll never get away. I turn and sleep, but parts of me won't. They stay very still. Someone is always touching me. Easter, the sky a full-blown rose. From under the shade of a loquat tree, my Uncle Wolf says, you're writing a ghost story, a book for a man who's never gonna come. I think those are my preoccupations, and you know, the whole book is sort of like the preoccupations of the soul of my life. And even after finishing the book, I still have those preoccupations. So I'm going to read a few newer poems that are not in the book, that I published, or that will be published, but that I don't know if I've read some of these. Last Dream. I wish I could stop bringing myself to Jesus. He comes and goes like a sister who rents the back house and refuses to sell her dogs. I walk into the kitchen and say to my mother, who was at the stove stirring beans, I've lost my sight, but she doesn't turn. The following morning, I leave through a door I make in water, a tear I find in the shallow of my back. That poem, along with this poem, was published in the Colorado Review, maybe I don't know, like 6 months ago. So obviously these are things I still think about. Pool of the Dead. The ghost turns out to be my boyfriend. My other roommate, a cousin recently paroled, wants to play cards. We do math and laugh in the doorway of his prison cell. In the backyard of the house is a pool of babies with long white hair who float in carriers and laugh when the water covers their faces. Okay. And then the next poem I'm going to read is part of an anthology that is going to be coming out. I'm not sure soon, but it also continues with. By the way, I don't like try and do this. It's just things that happen. This idea of sort of referencing like biblical incidents and how they sort of overlap in my experiences. Garden of Jessamine. I am repairing silverfish on a station of the cross when Jesus pulls me onto his lap. Someone sees and he leaves through the screen door with a slam and shouts, "Liar." I hide my nakedness inside his belly. A thatch of olive fields, my father walks in boxers, waiting for my mother to fry him potatoes with a black eye. On one side of his face, where hope is written, a speck of me appears that he never sees. Can you forgive that? And I think I'll end there. I think I may be out of time.
Do you want to read one more?
Yeah, why don't I read one more? Especially because I was saying a little bit earlier that I'm not clear on what time it is ever now. So why don't I read? Okay. I'll read this poem. I haven't read this poem in a long time. In the starlight of an arrest, I communicated by dividing my face into dozens of complicated shapes. In one room, projected on the walls, were films my brother had made. When I asked what was wrong, my mom showed me a Polaroid he'd taken in prison. They poisoned him, I said. And then, Dad, I called into the hallway where he appeared covered in blankets, a ghost. You said you were going to protect him.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much. So we do actually have a question that people are allowed to submit. Can you see that question, Diana? So it's coming from Lisa. And the question, what does preoccupation mean to you? How do you define it for yourself and work?
I think preoccupation might be the same as maybe like a thought that takes up a lot of space, or a confusion around a specific thing that I don't necessarily have a name for, the unknown, a question. And I think those things for me, oftentimes, even though I think a lot of the book, like the book is a good example of like preoccupations that I had that I was very ashamed to write about. There's a lot of things in the book that I kind of avoided. And then toward the end of the book, I was like, I think I need to write about this, or not. I think I just did. And then even now, sometimes I'll read certain passages and like my face will turn really red. So even though I don't want to, I do. And that's for me what preoccupation is. Like, I don't want to, but I do.
That's good. There's a question from Amber, and she asks, I'm curious to know which characters / themes from the first poem you chose to showcase in your novel. Wait. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Amber, I don't have a novel yet. But those characters or themes from the first poem carry out, where there's 2 poems about my Uncle Wolf. So Wolf reappears both when he is alive, and there's my sort of remembering an incident of me talking to him after he had lost the use of his legs, and he's paralyzed from the waist down. And I remember going to visit him at my grandmother's house, and then out of nowhere, he had a gun in the seat of his wheelchair. And I was like, what is going on here? But he you know, and there was really no, that's a lot of the book. It's like, there's these things that happen, and I'm like, what is going on? So Wolf does reappear there, and then there's also another poem about Wolf that reappears after he's passed away at his wake. And El Scorpion, my grandfather, also comes back, and it's also it's a very short moment in the book, a prose poem of him responding to my grandmother about his death.
We have a third question, and this one is from Emily. You said you might be writing a book. What genre interests you, or have you already started it?
Yeah. I am very interested in what is now like the genre books of like horror, the uncanny, things that have to do that traditionally are not necessarily seen in poetry. Like you can pick up a book, I think in many, you can engage in many of the other art genres and be like, that really fucking scared me. Like I was scared. I couldn't, at least that's how I respond to those things. But it's difficult sometimes to pick up a book of poetry and be like, wow, that really, it can be unsettling, but like that there's a different type of fear that's generated in these novels or even in these scary movies. So I think that's something that I'm really interested in sort of exploring, like what are the limitations of that genre, and how I can kind of adapt that with the material that I want to write about. And that was something that I thought a lot about in this book, was like, how do I create an unsettling, dangerous, violent environment without just recreating stereotypes, even though there's some that might argue that I did. But I was like, how do I do that in a more sublimated way? How do I how can it be amorphous? Like, you know, how is there fluidity even in that? So that's something that I'm really interested in doing. And you know, there's a few books that do that really well, like Pedro Paramo by Juan Rufo, Carlos Fuentes's Aura, even Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin, which is a really awesome read. So yeah.
I have one short follow-up to that. Can you hear me again? So what is it about horror and or the uncanny that you are drawn to?
I think because somebody can tell you one sentence and it will give you shivers, right? Or it will, I think that there's something ancient about that fear. That on a day-to-day basis, we normally, you know, we stress out and worry about things, but we don't necessarily fear that as we go out in the dark, that the devil is going to grab us, right? And I think that there's something primitive about it, that I just have a very deep fascination with that. And like, how do you bring that? How do you make, I'm always very interested in how do you make people feel? And that particular feeling is very interesting to me because that's how I was made to feel my entire, you know, my childhood is like I was being told these stories of these entities or ghosts or spirits or forces that were at work that we had no control over. And there's something about that I would love to, I just would love to kind of like deeply dive into that and create something that would be interesting for people that might think that those things are just simply Stephen King novels. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
And thank you again for reading, for sharing your time and space with us this morning. And thanks for everyone for attending. Again, Diana is the author of Tracing the Horse, which, as she said, came out in September, is still very new. Try to track it down through our local booksellers, especially. So I'm going to put up some more links to Diana's work through the library's new Twitter account, Pima_CC Library. as well as a link to her book. And hopefully we'll have some more readings in the future. So thanks so much, everyone.
That would be great. Thank you so much for listening, and take care.
Yeah, take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.